The Magnus Archives is a horror fiction podcast following Jonathan Sims, head archivist of the Magnus Institute, which is just an academic institute researching the supernatural. The podcast follows him and his archival assistants as they tell stories of horror and as they slowly realize that the statements they receive are not quite as fake as they appear. The Magnus Archives is also the only thing I can talk about. Seriously, I've tried to shut up about it. I've tried to find other interests, but it takes up so much of my time. The show has like 230-ish minute episodes, and I've listened to the whole thing like 5 times through. I have a problem. I talked about it in my comfort media video, but that video is kind of old, and I find a lot of it embarrassing, to be honest. Currently, the Magnus Archives 2, or the Magnus Protocol, is on Kickstarter, so I'm re-listening to it, again, in preparation. Seriously, that's enough preamble, let's just get into the full summary. This is Jonathan Sims. He explains that his predecessor, Gertrude Robinson, is dead and he's her replacement, even though he's very unqualified for the job, but we don't know that yet. He's overall kind of posh and prickly and British and explains that he's pretty skeptical of most of the statements they receive, which are basically people telling their stories of supernatural experiences. John has 3 assistants, Tim, Sasha, and Martin. Most of season 1 is John reading out the statements for the sake of organizing, but ooh, spooky, some of them don't record on his laptop and need to be recorded on cassette tapes. Through different statements, some names and descriptions pop up multiple times. There are books that make horrible things happen around or to the reader, and they all have a seal on the inside cover saying, "From the Library of Jürgen Leitner." In one episode, John reads a statement where a man sleeps with a lady and she later explodes into worms. Fun. This becomes important when Martin, his least favorite assistant, is doing follow-up on an unrelated statement. He enters a basement filled with cobwebs and encounters that same woman filled with worms. He drops his phone while running and wakes up to the woman trying to invade his apartment. He's stuck there for 2 weeks, besieged by filth. The worm lady, whose name is Jane Prentice, uses his phone to impersonate him by texting the Institute, saying Martin has the stomach bug and that it might be a parasite. Get it, because she's filled with bugs, like she has worms in her. After Martin gives his statement, John offers to let him sleep in the archives. The worms continue to show up here and there around the Institute and around town. The archival staff try and kill them when possible, seeing as they can burrow into your flesh and kill you, but there seem to be more and more of them just popping up. Later that same month, another assistant, Sasha, sees a strange distorted figure through a window. It calls itself Michael. Michael is described as having an unnerving laugh and weird hands, like all his bones are in his fingers. He seems mostly nice. He pulls one of the parasitic worms out of Sasha's leg with his weird knife hands, but there are statements about him pulling people through these horrible, distorted corridors and eating them, kind of, in a metaphysical kind of way. It's hard to explain. Here's a fun fact. John hates spiders. He kills them on sight. So when he sees one, well...
It has been something of a... Ugh. Ha! Oh, whoa! Yeah. Sasha, run!
Yeah, the wall breaks apart, revealing worms. Lots of them. John and the others try to escape, but Tim and John both get worms in them. They go into the tunnels beneath the archives. By the way, they found secret tunnels beneath the archives, and they find 2 things. The first was a ring of writhing worms like a door. The second was the body of Gertrude Robinson, John's predecessor. She was shot in multiple places. Murdered. At some point, Sasha goes to Elias Bouchard, the head of the Institute, and pulls the fire suppression system, which kills Jane Prentice since her worms are basically allergic to CO2 and suffocate. In the aftermath, they realize that 2 tapes go missing. At some point during the chaos, Sasha goes into artifact storage and she... I see you. He's actually fine. Yeah, nothing weird about her. John's strict professionalism quickly crumbles. He starts exploring the secret catacombs under the archives until a voice calls out from the darkness telling him to leave. He starts researching Gertrude Robinson's death, becoming increasingly suspicious of his assistants and colleagues. The police are investigating Gertrude Robinson's death and the Institute, and one cop, Basira Hussein, agrees to exchange tapes from evidence about Gertrude with John so he can investigate. She's part of this group of officers given a Section 31, which is basically paperwork you need to fill out when encountered with something spooky or supernatural. She and her co-worker Daisy give John a few more tapes as the season goes on, but Basira later ends up quitting after a confrontation with a cult worshipping the dark. Remember Michael, that guy with the weird hands? A woman named Helen Richardson gives a statement about being tormented by his weird yellow door and tricked into entering. She escapes for a bit to give her statement, but accidentally leaves the room through Michael's door, which just appeared magically on the wall. John's paranoia increases throughout the season. After every statement, he records a supplemental tape about his scheming and investigation. He breaks into Gertrude's old apartment, looks through people's desks, even stalks Tim's house. It's insane, and it's really been driving a rift between him and his assistants. He finds Martin's concern genuinely suspicious and can't even consider the fact that he could actually be worried about John. He thinks that the archival staff distancing themselves from him means they're planning something, even though he's clearly the problem here. John also starts to realize Gertrude was far from the doddering old woman he thought she was. She knows a lot more about what's going on than he probably ever will. He also finds out that there's someone living in the tunnels. Spooky. And then something strange happens. Tim confronts John about how he's being frankly insane, and then this exchange happens.
You firing me?
I'm offering you a chance to quit. Just say the words.
I can't.
Why not?
I can't. I don't know. Why can't I quit?
I don't know. But I don't think I can fire you either.
What?
It's this place.
I don't understand.
Neither do I.
Yeah, so they can't quit their jobs. Like at all. Like, for supernatural reasons. Melanie King is a ghost investigator YouTuber, and she gives her second statement this season. She has a weird interaction with John as well. She asks if they hired a new assistant. John asks why, because no, they always had the same people, and Melanie says no, they hired another girl named Sasha. She asks him if he's trying to gaslight her and leaves, but he seems genuinely very confused. After all this, John listens to one of the tapes that he gets from Basira, and it describes an imposter, an entity that can eat anyone in a way and replace them so that no one remembers the true person beneath. It can replace photos, memories, recordings, anything. That is, except for Polaroid photos and magnetic tapes, like that of a tape recorder. John realizes that the tapes that went missing are the tapes that had Sasha's voice on them, her real voice. John thinks that Sasha's been replaced by this thing called the Not Them and plans to kill it. There is this web pattern table in artifact storage, and he believes it's like fueling her. He smashes it with an axe, but when Michael shows up, he laughs and reveals it's actually the one thing holding the Not Sasha back. And now, well, there's nothing holding it back. John flees through Michael's distorted door to a different part of the tunnels. He tries to hide, but the Not Sasha finds him. Meanwhile, Tim and Martin get stuck in those distorted hallways for who knows how long. I know how long. It was 3 weeks for them, maybe like a lesser amount, less than 3 weeks in real life, 3 weeks in the tunnels. The time doesn't work in there. John is about to be cornered when he's saved by Jürgen fucking Leitner. This is the guy whose name is written in all those spooky books, and there are lots of statements about spooky books eating people or destroying their lives or whatnot. Leitner traps Not Sasha in the tunnels with a book and then goes to John's office with him, though he seems to be a bit on edge. He explains that these monsters are aspects of these supernatural entities. They're not gods, but they're powers, and they live alongside the world, not in it and not quite in another dimension or universe. It's like a semi-permeable membrane. Like, bits of the spooky stuff can get into our universe, but, nothing can go out into the fear world, Every so often, as I said, a little bit of that power leaks through, manifesting as things like Michael or Not Sasha, or like the books, or the table, or whole places. Speaking of whole places, he also says that Elias, the head of the Institute, might have killed Gertrude to stop them from destroying the archives, which is Elias's place of power. The Institute itself belongs to the Eye, which is one of the powers, and John belongs to it too. He even has a title, the Archivist, whatever that means. He goes out for a quick smoke break to question his existence before Elias pops in and... yeah, Elias kills Leitner with a pipe. John pops back in, sees the dead man in his office, and basically leaves in a huge panic. Then Tim and Martin escape from Michael's weird mirror dimension and see the body in his office. They think he did it.
Y'all, I've been working on this video for like a year, and I convinced myself I had to re-listen to the entire podcast in order to summarize it and draw all the art, and now here we are, and this whole thing isn't even finished. So I've decided to put this video into 2 parts. If there's some references to the Magnus Protocol or references in general that are a bit outdated, that's why. Thank you everyone, goodbye and good night.